What if you could have a career where the opportunities are as vast as our nation, where it's not about mission statements, but a shared mission? At U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we go beyond to protect more than borders. From ship to shore, air to ground, cities to local communities, CBP agents and officers are keeping people safe. Join U.S. Customs and Border Protection and go beyond for something far greater than yourself. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. On this episode, I'm joined with set decorator Lydia Marks. She is currently nominated for Outstanding Production Design for her work on Fosse, Verdon. Being from New York, she has certainly made a mark on some recent films that burst with New York design. With a background in photography and art history, you can see in her sets how she works in the details to every frame. I talked to her about Fosse Verdon and the details and research it took to bring their lives to the screen. I asked about the influence of New York City on her films and about working with female directors. Lydia's films include You Can Count on Me, Broken Flowers, The Namesake, The Devil Wears Prada, Sex and the City 1 and 2, Away We Go, Schenectady, New York, The Brave One, Money Monster, and the Netflix show Maniac, which was so all over the place. We talk about that too. She also worked with great directors such as Jim Jarmusch, Jodie Foster, Sam Mendes, and Charlie Kaufman. She has been nominated for an International Online Cinema Award for Schenectady, New York, nominated for an Art Directors Guild Award for Maniac, and she is currently nominated for her work for an Emmy on Fosse Verdon, the story of Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon's life that spans from the 40s to the 80s. She is a working mom, a partner in an interior design group called Marks in France. She works constantly on amazing projects. And all this, I don't know how she finds the time, but her Instagram is pretty solid. You could check that out at lydia.oh.lydia. Lydia, oh Lydia. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me from New York City in your busy day. How is it? Is it hot there? What's going on? Is it heat wave? I don't know.
New York is beautiful right now. It is
nice.
About 78 degrees and sunny. It's a nice switch from what we've had.
This is the same in LA, so that's nice.
That's a nice thing to hear.
That's a nice break. I'm going to start with you have a background in documentary photography work and attended Tufts University studying art history and interior design. So how did you do that and then transition to set decorating?
So I actually studied both at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and Tufts University. The museum school functions as Tufts Art School, basically. So I took my art classes there, and then my academics were at Tufts. And I did focus on documentary photography. And for me, I did a lot of street photography growing up in New York City. And I was really interested in kind of capturing people just where I saw them, kind of the Cartier-Bresson thought process of, photographing people and capturing a moment in the world. And what I started to notice was I would bring certain images into critiques in class, and people would make judgment calls on the subject, the person in the photo, and who they were and what they were about based on their environment. And I would often find myself kind of explaining away that environment or saying, no, this person actually had nothing to do with the scene behind them. It was just a moment in time that I captured. But as I was explaining this often, I realized that environments actually gave the viewer so much input into who this subject of the image was. So I got very interested in the environments of the subject. And that's kind of what eventually led to the set decoration, because I could make the environment and create the character based on their environment in their room or their home or their office or whatever the set might be. In between those two things, I also started doing documentary video, because I felt like if people didn't have the ability to explain who they were and say, you know, this is not my environment, I was just walking past this shop, that I felt like if they had words in the videos, I would be able to kind of be more honest, I guess, and forthright about their place in this image. And then I realized when I started editing the videos that I could also change that just like you can in a photo. So I realized that it's all kind of a creative process that could be manipulated. Right. And that was kind of my middle step in getting to the film work and making the sets and the environments. And I was lucky enough that I had a friend who was working in as an art director in music videos at the time. And I was working in the Museum of Fine Arts. No, I was working at MoMA at the time, New York MoMA, and in the photography department. And I called my friend and I said, what are you working on? I want to come and see what goes on set, because I wanted to be more hands-on and making these worlds. And he was working on a Beck music video for Devil's Haircut. Nice. And I said, oh, that's my new favorite song. Yeah. I want to come to set. And that was the first job I did, and it got me here.
Oh my gosh. And then what project did you work on that got you into the union?
So I was working on a project in North Carolina. It was a really small film called The Good Baby. Mm-hmm. And North Carolina is a right-to-work state. So we had a nice mix of crew. And I was still non-union. I had submitted my applications to Local 52 to get in the union in between, before I left and when I was coming back. I was going to come back and take the test. And in the middle of my project in North Carolina, the union came in and unionized the movie. Nice. So I got into the North Carolina union and asked them if they could talk to Local 52, and they did. And so when I came back, Local 52 took my resume, and I had enough work behind me that they were able to just let me in at that point. So I was lucky, because that can be such a long process, and that kind of opened up much bigger projects for me and a lot more opportunity.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder to get into the union in New York? In my mind, it is, because I didn't do it that way. You know, it seems like, oh, I don't know how people do it over there kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's the same, though. It's hours, and then if something turns and you got to be at the right place and right time, it's the same deal, right? They're over in 52.
You know, it used to be very, very difficult. The union was much harder, I think, to get into. There used to be less work. Before streaming, there was a lot less work in New York, but there was a lot more TV commercials than there are now. We used to have a lot of them, and there's very few now here, but those jobs are all, a couple of weeks long. And so they didn't really want, I think, for a while to admit that many new people, but then when streaming started, now there's a lot of people working on permit, and then they eventually, get enough hours, they get in. So the process has changed. I'm not that as familiar with getting in now, because I've been in so long. Yeah. But I think it's a little harder here than in LA.
I think so too. I don't know what makes me feel that way, but I feel like it is. I feel like they're more harsh there. I mean, it was hard here. It took me years to get in.
Did it?
Well, it was a lot of doing non-union stuff, and then I worked on a film that turned, luckily. So, but I was like, and I started out trying to be an art director, so I took a completely different path and then changed around, and even to get in the Art Directors Guild took me years. So all in all, I think from when I started till I finally got into the local 44 here was like 6 years
Oh,
from
wow. Now,
like working.
can a decorator come to LA and work if they're in 52? Can they work on a
Yeah,
44
they
project?
they can, but you have to be paid like they have to give you money for something. You know what I mean? Like they have to you get, your pay for traveling or whatever. It's something like that. But you can, I don't know if it's special permit, or I don't know if you have to give them anything. I don't know. I think it's more like if it's one job, it's fine. If you're going to stay for more, you have to join.
Uh-huh.
Because
And will
what
they let you just join then if you have a project there?
I believe so. I believe it's like they look at credits and they look at like what you're working on, and I think it's like a letter from producers, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it goes like that. I do know though, now I'm thinking of it, when Veep moved to Los Angeles, the decorator didn't want to join 44, and maybe because that was a TV show, because she would have
Mm-hmm.
been here longer. That's one of the reasons she didn't come with the show. So
Okay.
maybe, but I know decorators who have come here to work,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and vice
I
versa.
think it's different than New York because in New York, I believe if a 44 decorator is coming here to work because they've been requested by a director, they match the labor here. So they assign a second decorator to the
Oh,
project
I see.
in order to be able to do that here. So I feel like that's where some of the big differences are between the two.
Oh, right. I mean, there's so much union stuff that you get into and then you forget because you're like, I don't know, that was a confusing thing. I don't know
Right. It's just
And
working now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I should have started with congratulations on your Emmy nomination for Fosse
Thank you. I'm so
Verdon.
thrilled.
Uh,
So thrilling.
I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't. I
Oh, thank you.
I loved. I'm telling you this, and I'm not trying to be a kiss ass. I literally was watching it for the sets because I couldn't. I love Sam Rockwell. I couldn't really fathom who the audience was. Who was trying to watch this film? Like I'm like, who is this being made for? Because
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the audience was so small that it was
Mm-hmm.
attracting. So I couldn't. I was like, something's got to happen that this is why it's so good. I mean, I think the acting was superb. I think the sets were phenomenal, but I couldn't quite understand. Damn, who greenlit this? Because this is like a chance to take because it's not a well-known story. He's not
Right.
like, he's not a great guy. Why are they
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But how much prep time did you get for that?
I think I had about 10 weeks of prep time, which is longer than I usually get, but because it was so many periods we were reproducing, we started, with the 40s with their homes, with Bob and Gwen and where they came from. And then in the 50s, with, his beginning of his career, and then into the 60s when they met, um, and then obviously the 70s. And we recreated, all of these stage sets throughout the schedule. So we did things from Damn Yankees and
Yeah.
moving forward up until the revival of Sweet Charity was the last one. Or actually, Bob died the opening night.
Right.
Yeah.
What was your most difficult set? Like, I mean,
Some
gathering
of
stuff.
this, it's a hard question because things are difficult in different ways. Bye Bye Life, which was the finale from All That Jazz, which was his autobiographical demise, basically,
Right.
was a tricky set to reproduce because we actually couldn't figure out what the silver mylar that is really the whole set, this big backdrop, and the whole set is reflective, and it had to drape a certain way. And because we were trying to be very, very true and accurate to the original set, it was really important to us that we really recreated them honestly and truthfully. That we finally called Tony Walton, the designer,
Oh, great.
who had done that film and some other of Fosse's work, and he told us it was this product called Mirex, which is a draping mirrored fabric, and it's the company that created Mirex is out of business. So we did 1,000 different tests on different mylars and different weights of things and different reflective materials, and we finally figured out a combination of materials depending on where we were using them on the set that worked. So that was technically a difficult set. Some of the other theater sets that we were recreating were tricky because we didn't have actual footage of the really old shows, so we had to go by pictures. And the still photos, which we had a lot of for a lot of the shows, they're all taken from a certain angle. So we thought we had it, and then when you start to actually try to reproduce it, you realize, oh wow, we need to make this three-dimensional, but we don't know what was happening on this side of the room. So we had to do a lot of sort of expository work to figure out how to make them three-dimensional from the two-dimensional images. So those were tricky in that sense. And then because Bob and Gwen's daughter Nicole was one of our producers, and she supplied us. There's a Verdon Fosse legacy that has a giant archive, and there's also a Library of Congress archive. We were able to look at a lot of still photos of them in their apartment. So we had a lot of information of different spaces between the images and their daughter of how they lived in their space. And so we needed to keep it honest enough. It wasn't a replication of their apartment, but it was certain elements were replicated, like the crushed velvet orange wall covering in their living room. That was really theirs, which you cannot buy.
No.
So we got crushed velvet and made it into our own wall covering. But some of that we had to kind of invent, and in a way that worked for the blocking of the scenes also. But that was tricky because it was their home, and it was very important that it felt like their home, even if it didn't always mimic exactly what their home was.
I believe I read somewhere that their daughter was really emotionally moved by all the sets that you recreated, and really pleased with like how much detail you gave to her mom and everything. I mean, that's got to be such a compliment.
It was amazing when, we all sort of were holding our breath when Nicole walked onto the set for the first time to kind of see it almost finished and not knowing exactly what she would say. And it was really, really important to everybody that it passed her litmus test of truth. And she was incredibly moved by it, as I can't even imagine being her and having your life, acted out like this, especially because it's a complicated one. Their relationship was complicated, her relationship to them was complicated.
It's not Disney.
It's not Disney. And she was very honest and open and wanted the story to be told. So the fact that she walked in and really loved it and had some very minor but really interesting details to add. So the night the set was done, I went out and I sort of took care of the last of the details. And you never know if these things are seen on camera, but they add that element of veracity into it. Like one small example was we loved her kitchen. Gwen was a big cook, and so we spent a lot of time making this kitchen really feel like hers. And we had a lot of pictures of the kitchen, so we knew what it looked like, and we took some liberties with it, but in general the overall vibe is very much like their real kitchen. And she loved the kitchen, and the one comment she had in the kitchen was, my mom took a lot of vitamins, and this was the brand. So I went to the vitamin shop and got a whole stash of her brand of vitamins and put them onto the open shelves in the kitchen. And it was just little details like that we added in at the end from her. Feedback that in the living room, she said it's all exactly how it should feel, but my mom loved green because she knew that this sort of mossy shade of green made her hair pop. And she always really, she knew she was a star. She knew what worked for her. So she filled her world with things that worked for her. And so I went out and I got some mossy green pillows and added them in with her. She also loved animal prints. So we mixed them in with the animal prints and, came to the final place like that. So yeah, that was a huge compliment. And I think the actors felt really good knowing that they were, because Michelle Williams was so in it, and I think it just for her really fed her performance to really know that, especially through Nicole's eyes, this was their space.
Yeah, it's so important too when actors are just jump right in and open up the drawers and they see that we've put in the detail or even ask like, why is this here or anything, and some detail that we might have stumbled on that they hadn't, or maybe it's wrong and one of us will correct it. But the times that I've had details given to me like that, it becomes so juicy. You just want to dive in, like, okay, well, what vitamins did she take? Did she take vitamin C? Did she like you just want like so much more because it's so exciting in a sense to be able to go that deep. I love it.
It is, and then I think it feeds everything because as people start to realize, oh wow, we can open this drawer and pull out the, let's make tomato sauce, and Gwen loved to make tomato sauce, and we had everything we needed to do it, and fresh tomatoes in this basket in the window, and so they would write things in also based on what we gave them, and it's so fun to be collaborative in that sense, not just set it up as a static, this is our set and we will redress it every day, but we really gave it life. We spent every morning, we would go in and change it just a little bit. Somebody was playing a game last night. What was left over?
Right.
Nicole was, had a dollhouse scripted. And I had bought this big dollhouse in the beginning of the shoot because I knew it was going to be important because there's a scene where she's playing and ends up putting a bottle of her father's speed into the dollhouse, and she gets in trouble at school because she brings it to school with her. It's a big scene in our show, and I brought this dollhouse in the beginning, and it just stood out as something that didn't fit in their home. The way they lived, the way they treated their daughter, and they sort of treated her as an adult often, gave her a lot of independence. It just seemed not unbelievable that a little girl would play with a dollhouse, but it seemed unbelievable that in our set we would have this big child dollhouse play area.
Right.
When that's not how they lived. They didn't live
care
like that.
Yeah. They didn't really give her space, like a child space.
No, she fit into their world.
Right.
They didn't make their world work for her. She fit into theirs, sort of. So I came up with this idea that we had this great liquor cabinet that was kind of just at her eye height, that inside of the cabinet with the closed doors, in between the liquor bottles, I put all the dollhouse furniture and everything.
God,
and we ended up kind of integrating it into their world in a great way. And the writers really liked it, so they ended up leaving it as part of the story, which was really fun. And yeah, so that kind of input and then change of thought and then a little bit of change of the writing because of it is just, it made this such a nice collaborative process on that show. I really felt like we were all like a big team making a great piece, which is so exciting when that happens.
Well, it turned out gorgeous. I mean, seriously, I've watched it. I've watched a couple of the episodes twice. Just because, well, I'm still so fascinated of like, why am I watching this? I couldn't. I don't know.
Are you a Fosse fan?
I don't know. I mean, I never thought somebody would make a movie about him. I guess I'm not in that world that I didn't know. I mean, I understand the influence that he's had, but I was like, really? Of all the stories? And it's a great story though, and I'm glad that I know it now. And I'm definitely one of those people that only knew Gwen from Cocoon. Do you know what I mean? Like, I knew she was an actress before that, but really, not really. I really only associated her with Cocoon. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't really know her at all, actually, but I did know Fosse because I grew up in New York, and I think that it's probably a very New York story, because growing up here, he was sort of
Right.
he was like a star, you
Right.
know, when
Oh,
I was
yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
And then I saw all that jazz at probably way too young of an age, and it really influenced me and how I understood, I don't know, I guess creative men and their
Yeah.
place in the world. And I think it probably gave me some misunderstandings that took me a long time to get over about like the, you know, some of the trickier aspects of Bob Fosse and how he related to his dancers and
Mm-hmm.
women in general. And I think growing up, it really, you know, this idea that if you're a creative person, a creative genius, you kind of have a right to do whatever you want, because in the end, your art is the important thing. And look what I've created. And
Yeah.
therefore, everything is okay.
Yeah. And he's had such an influence. I mean, I understand that aspect of showing his life. Not that he was a good It didn't seem like he was a good person, but
Yeah.
but
Well, I think he would have been a hard man to live with.
yeah. You bring up the point of New York City, and I mean, almost all of your films have such New York City presence in them. You still have Fosse Verdon, you have The Namesake, Devil Wears Prada, obviously Sex and the City 1 and 2, The Brave One that played a big role in Flesh and Bone, the series. And is Maniac New York City, or is that undescribed?
Maniac is New York City, but yeah, I think it was kind of undescribed. In Maniac, we really strive to create our own world, and
well achieved, because I mean, I can't even imagine research for that of like, okay, it's going to be like this, but it's really going to have this twist, and what error, or like you like jump different errors in the same like building, like it was just beautiful to watch, just beautiful.
It reminded me a lot. I did this film several years ago called Synecdoche, New York.
Oh, yes.
That was a Charlie Kaufman movie.
Yeah.
And that, I think, you know, maybe 20 people actually went to the movies and saw it, but it got great reviews.
I saw it, not at the movies, but I saw it.
It's a tough movie. And Philip Seymour Hoffman actually said it was the hardest role he ever played. It was really hard, but Maniac took a lot of what we were doing in Synecdoche and made it a little easier to digest, I think. But that idea of time shifting and worlds within worlds, that was all also in Synecdoche, interestingly. But yes, New York has played a huge part, as I always think of New York as kind of one of the characters in my movie.
Yeah. I mean,
in my show. And yeah, I have definitely been drawn to projects that New York is a character in itself.
And you've done, I mean, from high end to, you know, back alleys. I mean, it's really, but you feel, I guess your projects, you know that there's no denying that it's New York City. And do you like shooting on locations then, or do you prefer like stage work?
I actually like both, but for different reasons. I mean, you know, that it's nice to have the total control of the stage work and be able to start from scratch and make it exactly what we all want it to be.
Yeah.
But there is some aspect of shooting on location that I think feeds creativity, which is kind of dealing with the unexpected, you know, and on stage work, you can do it too, where something you've ordered maybe comes in. We like to call it the Stonehenge moment, where we're like, oh, I thought that was 5 feet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't work.
Oh, and I call it the oh shit moment of like, oh shit. Wait a minute, all those shelves? I got to do all those shelves? Oh, okay.
Yeah, or the sign guy that thought that the sign was supposed to be 10 inches when you really meant 10 feet. And you're like, oh, no. But those kind of mistakes, I think often, I try to embrace them, because working around those kinds of things and the unexpected things, I think sometimes come up with solutions that make your sets feel less planned and precise in a more naturalistic way, because that's real life. That's the real life that gets into it. And I kind of love that.
Yeah. I like location work. I don't like being hindered by like you can't make holes and you know, we
Mm-hmm.
can't move that or work around that or hide this, and like you can't take this light fixture out. Those type of things suck. But the character of the location, I think, is always appreciated to me, just because
Yeah.
we're out and we're showing more, and we're, you know, being more diverse in the sets than the building. But yeah,
Right.
the restrictions always suck. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure in New York I can't make a hole. I can never make holes. It's the biggest pet peeve of mine.
The
And
whole.
oh my god, no holes. Like
That's funny.
we just go through those sticky, those like scotch sticky
Command.
command hooks. Like
Oh, I know.
I
We
should
love
buy
the command
stock in
hooks.
them.
I
Like,
know. I know. And the tension rod, the command hooks and
oh, the
tension
tension
rods. I
rods.
don't know what
Yes.
we would do without them.
Tension rods, we go through tension rods like they're nothing. And I'm like,
I know.
why? Where's the one I bought last week? Broke. Like they break really easily too. So we got my tension rod budget is usually pretty big too.
Right?
I have no idea how you're doing it all. I mean, because the projects that you have are so intense, at least from my view, and then you
Yeah.
have the design firm and being a mom, like I'm barely holding on. But
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
hard.
know. I don't know. I've seen so many, you know, parents in our job, and they're still making soccer games and they're still doing, and
I know.
I don't know how. Like, I guess it's just one day at a time, and you just
It is.
schedule
And
and
it is. It's one day at a time. And then I'm sure you know the feeling where you're like, oh my God. So our jobs are so detailed and overwhelming as it is that, you know, I wake up in the middle of the night. I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about vacuum form.
oh
I was
yeah,
like, wait a minute. Why
yeah,
aren't we
drapes,
vacuum forming this
shears,
thing?
yeah,
You know,
oh
and
yeah,
oh my God, it's not going to fit. I forgot the thing, you know.
yeah.
And then on top of it, like, I'm like, oh, the kid. And then, you know, everything is like, oh, all the medical forms are due for camp next week. And that starts on Monday and I haven't submitted them. And, you know, it's like, but then I just go, okay, like, do one thing. Okay.
Yeah,
Do the
yeah.
next thing, you know, like literally put one foot in front of the other and just keep going. That's how my like coach, my inner coach,
I
just
always
keep moving forward.
I always feel like, oh my God, we make a million decisions before breakfast.
Yep.
And then, like, I've been off 2 weeks, and if I have two things to do in one day, I forget about one of them. Like, it's like I completely turn off when I'm not working.
You
it's
need
so
to, though.
weird.
You have to give your mind a break. That's what I'm realizing.
I wanted to ask you about some of the experiences you've had working with female directors. You had Jodie Foster on Money Monster and Vina Sud on 7 Seconds. I hope I said her name right, because I love The Killing. So
I know, that was great, right?
oh, just so great.
I'm always so thrilled when I can work with female directors, and
Yeah.
it doesn't happen as often as I would like it to. So it's great when it does. And actually, the episode of Fosse that was nominated was a female director, which is exciting.
Nice. That's fantastic.
One of them was, yeah. And then Jodie Foster is amazing. She is very collaborative and very strong, but a quiet strong. So there was never any kind of, you know, meltdowns or stamping of feet. It was always very sort of thoughtful and, why did you do it this way? And let me understand it. And then we'll go from there and see how we want to handle it. Kind of a tact, which I don't think is specifically a female tact, but the female directors I've worked for have all, who knows why, maybe coming up to become a female director that gets hired for projects this big, they've needed to take a certain tact in their own path to be able to kind of
that's a good point.
You know, work through the system. Maybe that's the common denominator for all of them. I'm not really sure, but I've had amazing. Vina was also very open and collaborative, and I found with her, once we showed her kind of initial ideas, she would just show up to the set and she was good. We didn't have to go
that's
back
always
to her
nice.
with a lot of lookbooks and things like that. Yeah, she got the vibe, and then we were free to go. And she cared a lot, as do, you know, really good directors, about the performances. So as long as everything was in place and she could focus on the acting, she was great.
Yeah,
so I've had
we have a comment of we have a comment of like no comments is a good thing. Like
that's right. No news is good news.
Yeah, no one saying anything is a compliment. So we'll take it.
That's right, exactly. We would do for Fosse, we did a Broadway set for every 10 days. We would have a different episode with a different Broadway set in it. There was a number in every episode. Right. So I would, in the course of doing, 35 other sets, all period, we would have to decorate literally a theater Broadway set. And just one day of shooting and you were done. It was all like one day and done on that show. It was really a lot. But we would do them and, people would come in and start dancing. And we're like, my friends would call me and say, how did Damn Yankees go? I'm like, I don't know. Nobody said anything, so it's great.
Yeah.
So fulfilling.
Yeah, it is. It's that weird thing of like, oh, thank God there were no notes. Thank God nobody said anything to me. Like
exactly.
that's
I'm
it.
Go now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Are you guys done rehearsing? Because I gotta go.
I'm leaving. Yeah. Before you think of anything, I'm going now.
I get like really like my stomach starts to turn when just 2 seconds after a rehearsal they break down the set. Pretty much like half of the set goes away, and even like artwork and such. And I cringe because I think I don't know how it's all gonna get back together without me being here, but I gotta leave. Like, I gotta get out of here.
That's why we love our standby dressers.
Yes, our on-set dressers are amazing, and pictures and filling the frame, thank God. So yeah. I have taken up way too much of your time. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you. I'm a fan. I love your Instagram. I think that's really how, I think I was watching Fosse Verdon and I was like, who did this? And then I was like, oh my God, I'm such an ass. How do I not follow you? Because obviously the iconic work that you've done on like Devil Wears Prada and Sex and the City, like I know your name, but I wasn't following you, but your work is just impeccable. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess I need to do more marketing on my Instagram.
No.
Get it out there.
Thank
you so much.
Oh, I love it. So thank you, and I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I really appreciate Lydia taking the time to chat with me. I know that she's super busy. And I'm looking forward to meeting her at the Emmys. Fingers crossed for her. And as I said, I could not stop watching Fosse Verdon. It made me want to decorate. It was just so impressive. Check out my blog post for this episode and what's one up watching. Trying to do one of those a week, and it's really making me see how much TV I watch, which is weird because I used to watch a lot more TV before having the twins. So that's not good. I break down shows with a design eye and give you some sets to look out for, so I hope you check it out. If you are enjoying this podcast, which, if you are still listening, I'm assuming that you are, please write a review on iTunes. It's always great to hear from the audience, and I thank you so much for still listening. If you want to be up to date about our podcast schedule, please visit decoratingpagespodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanna for Decorating Pages. Decorating Pages is sponsored by Stogie Floaty, luxury pool floats. Float 'em if you got 'em. Visit stogiefloaty.com.